And I'd like to introduce Dr. Tereza Hubkova, an integrated medicine physician, and she approaches healthcare in an exceptionally personalized way. She has a background in internal medicine, but she's dedicated more than 20 decades to studying healing tools from nutritional medicine and functional medicine to the principles of Chinese medicine and Western herbalism. I guess I've never tried to pronounce that word. She is board certified in both integrative and holistic medicine and internal medicine. And before joining AdventHealth just in 2019, she spent 11 years caring for a diverse set of high-profile clients at Canyon Ranch, a renowned integrated health center in Massachusetts. So we're very excited to have you here, Dr. Hubkova, and I can't wait to hear what you have to share with us. So I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you everybody for making time to join me today to learn about your immune system and how we can make it better. And
you got it?
Take it out. Here we go. So, does anybody in the audience not know somebody who has allergies? Do you have nobody in your family, nobody in your friends who has allergies? It would be amazing because 1 out of 5 Americans suffers from allergies. And that's actually based on medical records. If you just ask people about allergies, it's more. It's about 30 to 40% of Americans who have some kind of allergy, maybe runny nose, sneezing, itchy eyes, asthma. So it's extremely common. Another thing that's extremely common is food allergy. Now we have 1 in 13 children have food allergies, which is a 50% increase since 1997. So I wonder if anybody out there can still send their children to school with peanut butter jelly sandwich. I think that's a long time gone, those days, that you could have peanuts or nuts at school. And this is another slide that shows that over the last 5 decades, we have this amazing steep rise in autoimmune diseases. So if you see there, we see this huge rise in thyroid diseases like Hashimoto or Graves' disease, celiac disease, which is autoimmune. I'll talk more about that. Type 1 diabetes in black, in red asthma, in the green I cut it off, but that was for multiple sclerosis, which is an autoimmune disease that attacks the sheath around nerves and can lead to somebody being in a wheelchair. And in the blue would be Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune disease that attacks intestines and often affects young people or children. So as you see, these diseases are reaching really epidemic proportions. And when you ask yourself, how is it possible that just over the course of last 50 years, we had such profound increase in these diseases, you have to realize it must be something in our environment, right? This cannot be in our genes. Our genes have not changed for thousands and thousands and probably millions of years. But what has changed is our environment and certainly our lifestyle. So our health is always kind of an interplay between our genetics, our DNA, our environment, and our lifestyle. And as I said, genes haven't changed, but our environment and our lifestyle are changing drastically. And they can affect our genes. So we call that epigenetics. Your lifestyle has the power to unleash or silence certain genes. So perhaps you inherited genes for diabetes from your parents, or towards obesity, or towards high blood pressure. But if you have a healthy lifestyle, you can actually silence those genes and they may not create a disease. And vice versa, if you have an unhealthy lifestyle, you can unleash certain genes and develop a disease. So that's what we call epigenetics. And this slide will illustrate how that works. So you see identical twins, Tom and John. They have 100% the same exact genes, same exact DNA. And so Let's just pretend that their mother tried to give birth vaginally because she heard that was a good idea. And the child on the left, Tom, successfully was born by vaginal birth. But then something happened, the mother went into distress, and the second child, Jim, had to be delivered by emergency C-section. So now they have very different microbiome, right? The one who was born vaginally went through the vaginal canal, which has a lot of bacteria from the mom, lactobacillus, acidophilus, and that immediately starts interacting with the baby's immune system immediately, and starts building the immune system. While Jim, who was born by C-section, did not inherit mom's microbiome. Instead, he was born in a surgical suit where everything was sterilized. So now he has a very different jump start to his life. Let's pretend that that Jim, for some reason, was offered for adoption. So Tom stayed with his mom, and he was breastfed. And breastfeeding is very important for the immune system because breast milk does not just feed the baby. In fact, breast milk has many, many carbohydrates that are there not for the baby, they are there for the microbes in the baby's belly. So breast milk equally feeds the baby as much as the microbiome in baby's belly, which has everything to do with the baby's immune system. While Jim was offered for adoption, so he couldn't be breastfed. Now he missed out on that building of his immune system. Tom on the left, who stayed with his mom and was breastfed, then his family had a dog. And having a pet has a very positive influence on children's immune system. Families where they have pets, the children raised in those families have much less allergies, much less asthma. While Jim, who was adopted, was not breastfed, didn't have any pets. In fact, his mom was absolutely paranoid about infections. So she was cleaning everything with antimicrobial soaps, antimicrobial wipes. She was trying to raise him in a bubble so he wouldn't get any infection. But unfortunately, despite that, he did get ear infection and he got an antibiotic, and that hurt his belly microbiome even more. So now his immune system was actually working less well when he got another infection, another antibiotic, then another ear infection, another antibiotic. And with each antibiotic, his immune system is getting weaker and weaker and weaker because it has a negative impact on his microbiome. The antibiotic doesn't just kill the strep throat or the bacteria that caused ear infection. It unfortunately also kills some of the good friendly bacteria in your intestines that you need for a healthy immune system. So Jim became kind of like a sickly child that had a lot of antibiotics, and by age 2 he developed eczema, and by age 7 he developed asthma. And by the way, giving babies just 3 courses of antibiotics in the first year of life triples the risk of asthma the rest of their life. So you can see how with identical genes, these babies were born with the same genetics, how very different diseases they develop. And if we follow their lifestyle as they become adults, if we follow their diet, how well they sleep, how much stress they have, do they exercise, we are able to predict which diseases they will develop in adulthood or when they are old, with much bigger accuracy than if we were trying to predict it from their DNA. So our lifestyle trumps the genes, almost always. There are very few genes, like for cystic fibrosis, that are so powerful they will manifest despite any lifestyle, but the vast majority of genes we can silence with healthy lifestyle. So how healthy our immune system has really a lot to do with our microbiome, with the kind of bacteria that live inside of our body, but also outside of our body. They live on our skin. We have bacteria and viruses also in the mouth, in your sinuses, in your lungs, even in the vaginal canal. So we have microbiome everywhere in our body. And for the most part, these microbes want to help us. They want us to be healthy and live as long as possible, because we are their house. They live in us and on us. We are their house. And if we die, they die. So the microbes that live in our body are helping us however they can. They actually make our immune system work as best as it can. And they also want to live in healthy neighborhood. So they will get rid of the bad microbes if you get them. If you have healthy microbiome, healthy bacteria in your throat, you're less likely to get strep throat. You're even less likely to catch a flu. If you have healthy microbiome in the vaginal canal, you are less likely to get sexually transmitted diseases, including less likely to catch HIV. If you have healthy microbiome in your lungs, you may be less likely to develop pneumonia. So remember that the microbes that live in our body, the friendly microbes, are protecting us from bad infections. They produce their own antibiotics, they produce their own antiviral and antifungal compounds. So we want to protect our microbiome, and most of it is probably in our gut. We have thousands of different species of bacteria and viruses and fungi and something called archaea in our gut, and it's teaching our immune system. It's teaching our immune system from the moment we were born, and now there's evidence that probably even when we were already in our mother's belly, that there was already microbiome developing then, and kind of setting the stage for how healthy your immune system will be in the rest of your life. So the first 3 years of our life are probably absolutely crucial in setting the stage for how healthy our immune system will be for the rest of our life in terms of allergies, autoimmune diseases, maybe even some cancers, chronic inflammation. So here are some other things that shape our microbiome. You know, I spoke about breastfeeding, which is important, but then when you grow up and you're adult, your diet is the biggest factor that shapes your microbiome in your adulthood. So if you eat junk food, you're gonna have junk microbiome, and your immune system is not gonna work as well, right? So you wanna eat the kind of food that supports healthy microbiome, and that will support healthy immune system. And that's pretty much plant-based diet with a lot of vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, but also lots of colors, lots of polyphenols from blueberries and green tea and cocoa and spices. So those are the kinds of foods and with fiber and colors that support healthy microbiome. The microbiome also is sensitive to overall lifestyle. So if you spend more time in nature, if you have enough vitamin D from sunshine, if you exercise, you will have healthier microbiome and healthier immune system. And on the other hand, certain medications can really harm it. So antibiotics are one. Sometimes you need antibiotic. It can save your life. If you have pneumonia or strep throat, you will need an antibiotic. But again, most sore throats, more ear infections, most of them are viral, and you don't really need an antibiotic for that. In fact, it doesn't do anything for viruses to take antibiotic. It's the opposite. It will make your immune system weaker, and now you may be more prone to other infections. So antibiotics in the long run can actually harm our immune system, and they've been also linked to more allergies and more asthma. The other medication that can harm your immune system are proton pump inhibitors, medications that a lot of people take for acid reflux or for ulcers. And I have no issue if somebody takes Prilosec or Protonix or Nexium, you know, for a month or for a couple months because they had an ulcer that needs to heal. I really take an issue when people take these medications for years and years or even decades. And that really messes up their gut microbiome. It interferes with digestion of food. It interferes with immune system. And those people often have higher risk for allergies in the future. So people who got prescription for Prilosec or Protonix or Nexium, there is a bigger chance that in the future they will need prescription for an antihistamine because they developed a new allergy or some other immune problems. So don't stop your medications because of this lecture, but talk to your physician, see if you still need to take them, and how could you be safely, slowly tapered off. So, and what really hurts our immune system and our microbiome is sugar and processed food. So, and it really hurts it in many different ways. It hurts the microbiome. When you eat sugar and processed foods, you're just feeding the kind of bad bacteria. It's not just that you're eating junk, it's what you are not eating. You're not eating any vegetables, you're not eating any fruit. Where are the grains, the nuts and seeds? So you kind of feeding a very limited number of microbes in the gut, and your microbiome will not be diverse. It will be very narrow. And that lack of diversity has been associated with diseases, with inflammation, obesity, Alzheimer's, diabetes, all kinds of problems. So we need diversity, healthy foods. Sugar is very harmful to microbiome and very harmful to your immune system. Speaking of COVID, which really wasn't the main subject of this lecture, but sugar will absolutely make you more susceptible to any infection. So when you eat such way that your sugar spikes, if you have a donut for breakfast, your sugar will spike really fast, really high. And there are studies that are already decades old that show that that will kind of make your immune system lazy for up to 5 hours. 50% less active immune system just by having high blood sugar from what you chose for breakfast. So then if you have an unhealthy meal for lunch that spikes your sugar again, you're suppressing your immune system for another 5 hours, and boom, here you are, much more likely to catch any infection, including COVID. So please be really mindful. Try to get sugar out of your diet. That means also processed foods and sweetened beverages, as well as alcohol. It's just really not a good idea, especially not now. But when you eat those unhealthy foods, you're more likely to develop obesity. And even 3 fast foods a week have been linked already to higher risk of allergies. And obesity is also linked to higher risk of autoimmune diseases. And of course, it's linked to higher risk of Alzheimer's and diabetes and coronary artery disease and a host of other conditions, including COVID. People are much more likely to catch COVID, and unfortunately, they are more likely to need to be hospitalized or to die if they have obesity. So there was never a more urgent time to lose weight than now, if you want to be on the safer side. And losing weight will also help you lower risk of allergies and autoimmune diseases. So here is something I wonder if you've heard before, the hygiene hypothesis. Hygiene hypothesis was already developed probably in 1970s in Britain by a physician who noticed that children who were raised on farms, and therefore they kind of were crawling around, eating dirt, touching animals, had more siblings, all the siblings had runny noses, that those children had healthier immune systems. They had less hay fever than children who were kind of raised in the city, where the mom, with best intention, was cleaning everything, again, with antimicrobial soaps and wipes. So we need certain exposure to dirt. We need certain exposure to the soil bacteria from our gardens and forests and animals and livestock. And that basically teaches how the immune system should develop, who's our friend, who's our enemy. So we need to go back to nature as much as possible, and we need to be exposed to dirt. It's interesting that there was recently a discovery of a certain microbe that's in the soil that is even important so we don't develop depression. And the fact that in modern times, so many of us are not exposed to dirt and we live so much indoors, that there may be also a contributing factor to why more and more people have depression. But hygiene hypothesis, it's interesting because if you look at countries around the world where they still have more infections, including things like parasites, those are the countries where they have less allergies and less autoimmune diseases. So more infections, more parasites, more kind of germs especially to be exposed to in a childhood. Less allergies, less autoimmune diseases. It's almost like a photographic negative of the world. So maybe we are just making the world too clean, too sterile, and now we see rise of these autoimmune and allergic diseases. And of course, we are destroying the soil bacteria with pesticides, right? So pesticides, including Roundup, they harm not just weeds, they also harm the beneficial soil bacteria that we so badly need for proper development of our immune system. And then when you eat food that was sprayed with pesticides, you ingest small amounts of it, it gets into your body, we can measure it in your urine if you're interested, and it is harming the gut bacteria. Pesticides like glyphosate is actually registered as an antibiotic. It harms the intestinal microbiome. It kills the friendly bacteria in your body, and now it has a negative impact on our immune system. Maybe that is why it has been linked to lymphoma, which is an immune cancer. There was a lot of billions of dollars rewarded to people who were working with glyphosate and developed lymphoma. But it has been also implicated in some other immune problems, as you will see in a little bit. So I'm gonna pause for a moment and I will switch to a case. So this was a woman I saw a few years ago, Kathy, and she was only 45, but she really came to me and she said, I feel 10 years older. She was tired, she had brain fog, she was diagnosed already 10 or 15 years ago with Hashimoto thyroiditis, with sluggish thyroid. And when she was 40, she went through menopause that early. So no wonder she was feeling older. You know, she went through premature menopause and had all these other issues. And I asked her, did anybody ever try to figure out why you had menopause at 40? Did anybody try to figure out why you had Hashimoto thyroiditis? And she said, no, I was just given prescription for Synthroid. And I was offered hormone replacement, but I didn't want to take it because I heard it's causing breast cancer. So she declined it and was miserable. So what I checked her for is celiac disease. I did a blood test to see if she may be sensitive to gluten, because that can often be the cause of autoimmune diseases such as Hashimoto or autoimmune premature destruction of the ovaries, premature menopause. And she had it. She had full-blown celiac disease. Now, she did not even have any digestive symptoms or just a little bit of bloating, but she really didn't have any major digestive problems, but she had celiac disease. And the reason I am bringing it up is that people with celiac disease, which is kind of extreme form of sensitivity to wheat and gluten, which is one of the proteins in wheat, has become also epidemic. And it has been connected to a variety of autoimmune diseases. So when back in medical school, 30 years ago, celiac disease was considered rare. Maybe 1 out of 4,200 people was felt to have celiac disease. It turns out that it has become much more common now. Now it's about 1 in 100. 1 in 100 people have celiac disease. Most of them don't know it yet. On average, it takes about 10 years to diagnose it. 10 years of going to different doctors, trying to figure out why you don't feel well. Maybe you go to gastroenterologist because you have some bloating and gas, or maybe you have some diarrhea, maybe not. 10 years of going to maybe dermatologist with rosacea or some other skin problems, going to psychiatrist with anxiety or depression, going to endocrinologist with Hashimoto thyroiditis, thyroid problem, or maybe type 1 diabetes, another autoimmune disease that can happen from celiac. So people can be going to all these different doctors for years before somebody actually puts it all together, connects the dots, that it could be all related to gluten. And it's extremely, extremely common. So how did that happen? You know, why we have so many people now with celiac disease, so many more than 30 years ago or 50 years ago? The answer probably is in our gut microbiome, in the gut bacteria. They have changed, right? Over the course of the last 50 years, our gut microbiome has changed. We've been exposed to pesticides. We've been exposed to antibiotics, not just prescription antibiotics, but there are antibiotics in the food that you eat, maybe in the burger that you eat, or the chicken, or the milk that you drink, because antibiotics are often given to animals, not just because they are treated in such a way that they have a lot of diseases, but in fact, antibiotics are fattening. So that's the major reason why they are used in food industry, to make the animals bigger, faster, fatter, faster. So we then consume these small amounts of antibiotics or pesticides, and that may likely be responsible for the increase of celiac disease. Is anybody with me still? I hope I didn't lose you. Don't hesitate to ask questions as I go too. You can send them through chat and I can answer them as we go. But celiac disease can present as any autoimmune disease. So I mentioned Hashimoto thyroiditis. It could be type 1 diabetes. And by the way, type 1 diabetes is on the increase. That's the type of diabetes that you need insulin from right away. It used to be a kind of a more rare disease of children, but now we see more and more type 1 diabetes even in adults. Sometimes they are misdiagnosed. Sometimes they are told they have type 2 diabetes, which is still the more common type, but oftentimes they actually have autoimmune type 1 diabetes. It can cause multiple sclerosis. Celiac disease can manifest as alopecia areata, which is an autoimmune condition where your hair follicles are attacked by your immune system and now you have patches of baldness. Or vitiligo, which is skin pigment being attacked by immune system and now you have kind of patches of white skin. Multiple miscarriages can be from celiac disease, depression, even schizophrenia. There's an absolutely fascinating article called Bread and Other Agents of Mental Disease. Bread, B-R-E-A-D, bread, what we eat, and other agents of mental disease, written by a couple of researchers in the University of Padova in Italy, where they noticed that many schizophrenics, many people who are hospitalized on mental wards in the hospitals actually have undiagnosed celiac disease. And when you take them off the gluten, their schizophrenia or their depression or whatever they had, their hallucinations disappear and they can have normal life again. So gluten is it's not a fad to be gluten-free. It is indeed a very serious problem that we have contributed to by destroying our soil bacteria, our gut bacteria, and by kind of really ruining our environment. And what it does in your intestines, it's causing something called leaky gut. So if you've never heard of leaky gut, you probably will. It's becoming more and more mainstream. 20 years ago, a lot of doctors did not believe in it, but now it's topic at every major medical conference because it's linked to almost any medical condition. And so when on the left side you see healthy intestine, healthy intestinal cells are like bricks next to each other, tightly connected next to each other, so nothing can go into your blood between them that's not supposed to go into your blood. Only the nutrients can go in. But on the right side, you have leaky gut, damaged gut, where the cells have spaces between each other. So now certain microbes can kind of traffic into your bloodstream. You see the black microbes trafficking into your bloodstream. And of course, when that happens, your immune system says, oh, what's this? This is not supposed to be here. This is a reason to concern, and it will launch an inflammation. So leaky gut is probably one of the biggest sources of inflammation and autoimmunity that we can have. And celiac disease is one of the reasons for leaky gut. You can also have leaky gut from stress, both physical or mental stress. Athletes sometimes develop leaky gut after running marathon. You know, you can have from just mental stress, you can develop leaky gut from wrong diet, the standard American diet, you know, full of sugar, full of fat, low on fiber, low on the colorful fruits and vegetables. That can lead to leaky gut. Antibiotics can lead to leaky gut, or some kind of microbial infection, parasite, yeast, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, medications like ibuprofen, Motrin, Advil. If you take them a lot for a long time, they can lead to leaky gut. So did I mention alcohol too? There are really a lot of things that can cause to lead to leaky gut. And just remember, it's kind of like the celiac disease. It can lead to inflammation. It can lead to symptoms anywhere, mental health, physical health, autoimmune diseases. So we should always think about that, and we can test for it, and then we can do something about it. But it's absolutely a real condition. It's not something that somebody made up.
Dr. Hubkova, we do have a couple of questions if you want to take them. One was, I don't know if you want to look at them or we.
Let's see, is it the, I'm trying to see where I would see them. Maybe you can read them to me. I don't know.
All right. Okay. So what's your opinion on chocolate bars that are 85% dark chocolate, so very low in sugar?
Yeah, you know, so chocolate is actually, especially dark chocolate, can be good for our microbiome because the polyphenols in dark chocolate, on the cocoa, the polyphenols feed some of the beneficial bacteria. Plus, it has a lot of antioxidants. So there are a number of studies that people who eat a little bit of dark chocolate have lower risk of heart disease, lower risk of stroke. They have healthier microbiome. So, but you don't want to overdo it, right? You don't want to eat a lot. So a small amount, I think it's a good addition to your diet.
All right. And then next question, and maybe this is something you'll be getting to, but can you reverse leaky gut through healthy eating?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So yes, luckily we can. It can take anywhere from a few months to sometimes a few years. Okay. It depends kind of how bad the situation was. But one of the things I forgot to point out and would like to point out that while we can often as physicians help you with certain supplements and dietary changes to reverse the course of diseases and improve them, it's much easier to be preventing them in the first place. You know, prevention would be much more important. And since you are in businesses, you are women who can really affect how we do things in this world, I feel that we kind of have to go up the stream a little bit with the prevention. You know, one of our biggest enemies is our food industry. It's really toxic. There are so many things in our food that are causing harm, and it's baffling. How come it's still allowed? How can you go to the store and buy a bar, you know, or candy that has sucralose in it, when sucralose is one of the sweeteners that we use in animals if we want to give the animal inflammatory bowel disease, to study inflammatory bowel disease. It's everywhere. It's in every kind of sweetened thing, and it's still allowed. Or triclosan. Triclosan is, it was banned just last year, finally, from cosmetics. It hasn't been banned from other things, but triclosan is added to cosmetic products, even things like toothpaste. All the antimicrobial soaps and antimicrobial washes had triclosan as an antimicrobial. But then it turns out that it kills our good bacteria as well, both on the skin microbiome, as well as if you swallow it from the toothpaste, you know, now it's going to be killing the gut bacteria. So it finally has been banned from some products, but it's still omnipresent in many other products, like athletic clothing sometimes has triclosan in it for antimicrobial purposes. Or even the artificial turfs that are on playgrounds for children. They have triclosan as an antimicrobial. Somebody thought it would be a good idea so their children wouldn't be getting staph infections or something from playing on the playground. Well, now it's known that triclosan can disrupt immune system. It can disrupt hormones, hormonal imbalance. it is causing all kinds of problems, and it's legally still everywhere around us. Rotenone is another example. Rotenone is a pesticide that's considered natural pesticide. So I was kind of digging into Roundup as a pesticide, but we have this natural rotenone pesticides. That is what is given to rats or mice in the laboratory if you want to give them Parkinson's disease. So you could study Parkinson's disease. So I think if you have in your work, in your job, some kind of power to change this, I think we as women have to step up. As community, we have to step up and put stop to this, because I can be giving somebody supplements to help them with leaky gut, but that is so much less effective than if we can just stop this craziness that we have gotten into. And really the whole epidemic, one of the first slides that I showed you, how many diseases we now have in epidemic proportions, that's a result of we cause to our environment. So yeah, somehow we have to vote differently and change things as much as we can. Any other question?
One kind of following on the leaky gut is there testing to identify leaky gut?
Yeah, and the testing has been evolving. Now we have much better tests than even 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I probably would do something with giving you 2 different kinds of sugars to drink and see which one got into your blood and which one didn't. But now we actually can test a molecule called zonulin, Z-O-N-U-L-I-N. It was only discovered by a team of physicians at Massachusetts General Hospital led by Dr. Fasano, probably in 2009 or around there, so it's very recent. And that's a compound that tells the intestinal cells to kind of spread and develop the gaps between them. So if somebody has high levels of zonulin, chances are they have leaky gut. Now, it turns out that every meal causes increase of zonulin for maybe 20 minutes. So every meal gives you a little bit of leaky gut. That's why overeating can also lead to more diseases of inflammation. And every meal containing gluten gives you even more leaky gut. But if somebody has celiac disease, now they release vastly more zonulin because of their genetics. So now instead of 20 minutes of leaky gut from eating donuts, they have 8 hours of leaky gut. And then they eat another meal that has gluten in it. And now they basically have permanent leaky gut all the time. So yes, we can check the zonulin. We can check anti-zonulin antibodies. We can do blood tests for it. And it's pretty easy. It's becoming pretty inexpensive, under $200. It's not covered by insurance, though. It's not done by your regular primary care physician will not know how to do it. But in kind of the integrative, holistic medical world, we have tests for it. And like I said, under $200. Any other question?
One more. So you talked about gluten and the gluten. So I think there's people that want to understand, what's a good way to adopt a gluten-free lifestyle that's affordable.
Yeah, the best way, and thanks for thinking about it, because it really is celiac disease 1 in 100 people, but then there are many more people who have non-celiac gluten sensitivity. That's a whole other condition that's also real. They may have bloating, brain fog, anxiety. They may have a lot of the same symptoms, but when you do blood tests on them, they don't have celiac disease. But they feel better if they get off gluten, and they get worse if they are reintroduced to gluten or wheat. So the best thing, I would still test you for celiac disease first. So if you can see a physician before you start any diet, get tested for celiac disease. It's a blood test. You don't have to necessarily have, endoscopy and biopsies. We have pretty good blood tests for that now. Because you want to know if you really had celiac disease, you have to be like 100% gluten-free. So you want to know. But if you have just a gluten sensitivity and you're going on a gluten-free diet, the best way to do it is real whole foods, vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, protein. Just give up processed foods. If you give up processed foods, it's going to be easier to give up gluten. And don't fall for the gluten-free junk food. There's so much gluten-free junk food, gluten-free Oreo cookies. You know, it's full of sugar, potato starch, rice starch, corn starch. Corn sometimes cross-reacts with gluten, so you may not feel any better. You continue eating that even though it's gluten-free. And it's very fattening because it has high sugar level. And it can be deficient, such diet can be deficient in fiber, deficient in B vitamins, deficient in magnesium. So if people don't do gluten-free diet correctly, they could actually hurt themselves. So we will be at the Center for Whole Health. Maybe we will change our name, but anyways, at the Integrative Center at AdventHealth, we will be doing lectures this fall on how to be gluten-free with our fantastic nutritionist and chef with recipes. So keep your eyes open, look at our website. Hopefully by September, October, we'll have these classes. But meanwhile, you can go on celiac.org and see which foods are gluten-free and focus on what you can eat rather than what you can eat. The positive thinking is always better than the negative, and try to eat whole foods rather than processed foods, in a nutshell.
Well, we'll let you continue. There's one more question, but we'll make sure we have room to ask a couple more questions before we wrap up. But let's let you continue.
So Joy was another patient I saw a few years ago, and she came to see me because her sister was recently diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis affects a lot of joints, a lot of joint aches, and it's autoimmune. So it's the immune system attacking joints. She was wondering if she's at risk because she just kind of started feeling a little bit achy. So that's why she came to see me. And so what we did with Joy is a couple things. We actually checked her for something called citrullinated peptides, which is a blood test that is sometimes, if it's positive, it can be positive even decades before people develop rheumatoid arthritis. So you can see something in the blood more than 10 years, sometimes 20 years before people develop rheumatoid arthritis. By the way, that's the case with other autoimmune diseases as well. There was a journal, New England Journal of Medicine, had the article about lupus, systemic lupus erythematosus, another terrible autoimmune disease that can be deadly. And they looked at veterans who developed lupus, but US veterans, they had blood drawn very, very often, and it's stored for research purposes. So when they developed lupus, somebody went back 10 years prior to look at their blood work to see if they will find the antibodies in the blood 10 years before, and they did. So you could basically see that somebody's on the road to develop lupus even 10 years before they have the symptoms, the first symptoms. And again, it can be the case with other autoimmune diseases as well. So Joy had the antibodies. I could see that she's on the way to develop rheumatoid arthritis. The other thing is she had unusual occupation. She was a firefighter. I see so many female firefighters, but you know, firefighters are exposed to a lot of pollution. When buildings are burning, you know, there's all kinds of stuff that's burning, computers or whatnot. I mean, 9/11 is a good example. The first responders from 9/11, they are all coming down with autoimmune diseases and cancer because they were inhaling all these toxins from the towers, and even after cleanup from the dust, a lot of heavy metals and toxins that they were inhaling and exposed on their skin. So she wasn't in 9/11, but she was a firefighter. Nevertheless, she was breathing a lot of toxins. And we now know that rheumatoid arthritis is linked to pollution. Air pollution increases risk of rheumatoid. Smoking increases risk of rheumatoid arthritis. People who live closer to major road have possibly higher risk of rheumatoid arthritis, according to some studies. So I had talked to her to see if she's willing to kind of retire from being a firewoman. And what else could we do for her? There's another interesting situation when some people develop rheumatoid arthritis because they have a particular microbe, either in their mouth or in their gut. So sometimes some bacteria can lead to autoimmune disease. In case of rheumatoid arthritis, it's a microbe in the mouth called Porphyromonas gingivalis. So if you have the microbe Porphyromonas gingivalis, and you also have genetic predisposition for rheumatoid, which she had, her sister had it, it's like boom, boom, pow, you know, like punch, punch, and punch. Like you are much more at risk of developing now rheumatoid. And if perhaps somehow we were able to get rid of the Porphyromonas gingivalis, maybe we could remove one of the triggers that's leading to rheumatoid. Some of the other bacteria that have been linked to rheumatoid arthritis are in the gut, things like Klebsiella, Proteus, certain microbes that we can see on a stool test. And if we identify them, then we can try to kind of make the intestine healthier with maybe probiotics, with fermented foods, working kind of on the leaky gut by stress reduction and removing of alcohol and just changing the lifestyle. And so we did all that for Joy. And we tracked her antibodies, the citrulline antibodies over time, and they have not gotten away, but they have not gotten worse, and her symptoms have not gotten worse. So she may still have she may still be on the road to rheumatoid arthritis, but we have slowed it down. We have kind of put the brakes on that train as much as we could. So hopefully she will not develop the disease until really, really late in her life, or hopefully not at all. So hopefully it makes sense, the illustration. The reason I'm saying it again, that environmental toxins are linked both to allergies as well as autoimmunity, and it's our responsibility for the sake of future generations, if not for our own, to do something about that. And finally, really quickly, vitamin D has everything to do with your immune system. Now, vitamin D is the sunshine vitamin. We make it in our skin when we are exposed to sunshine, and it informs our immune system, and it helps it better fight infections, but it also protects us from cancer and from autoimmunity. So when people have low levels of vitamin D, they are more likely to develop cancer. They are more likely to have autoimmune disease. They are more likely to have osteoporosis and other things too, but they are also absolutely more likely to get any kind of infection, upper respiratory infection, flu, as well as COVID. The worst cases of COVID and the more people dying from COVID or needing to be in the ICU were people who had low vitamin D levels. So go to your doctor and ask to have your vitamin D level checked, or come to me and I'll check your vitamin D level. It's a simple blood test. You want to make sure that you are in optimal range, which is probably around 40 nanograms per ml. And that range seems to people have much less upper respiratory infections, less cancer, less autoimmunity. Sometimes we push the level even higher, but for the infections, 40 would be kind of like a good level to aim for. So you get it from sun. So try to be outside every day. If you can do half an hour walking outside every day, that will be great. If you can do more, it's even better. In the middle of the summer these days, probably in 15 minutes of being outside, you make 15,000 units of vitamin D. So you can kind of stock up for the winter. But as we kind of get closer to the fall and winter, the sunshine is not as strong. The angle of it is not as strong. So most of us will need to take vitamin D supplements in the winter. Usually I recommend people sometime between October and May to take vitamin D supplements. Otherwise they probably will be low. So make sure that you get that checked. And I think we are at the end. So this is where people can find me, and I can take any other questions.
All right, well, we do have a couple more, and I'm sure now that everyone, feel free to chime in or type it in the chat, and I'll share it with Dr. Hubkova. So one person, I think we're all interested. Are you taking new patients?
Yeah, I don't do primary care. I do just consultations. So you just keep your regular doctor. You can come to kind of get some other angle of view from me. So that's what I do, and I absolutely would be happy to see anybody. I am at South Overland Park. Currently, I see patients on Thursday and Fridays, but if I see that the days fill, then I'm going to open some other days as well. Oh. And I continue to prepare these lectures on different topics so we can educate the community as much as possible. I'll be happy to see you.
Dr. Hubkova, I nominate you to be on Good Morning America.
Yes.
You need to educate the country on all these things we should be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what? It's nice. You know, there are so many doctors out there on Facebook and everywhere, and they just like, you know, just take this one supplement and everything will be good. Kumbaya, you know, life is good. And I am so like, that's a lie. That's a lie. We have to get our act together. We have to fix our environment. We have to fix our food. Otherwise, these diseases will keep growing. The epidemics are there, and it's affecting our children. Our children are now called Generation RX. Generation prescription, you know, because so many children are already on prescription medications, and it's what we are doing to our food and our environment. So I'm kind of like a revolutionary in my heart. Yeah, I went through one revolution when I was 18. I kind of helped to dismantle communism in Czech Republic. Now I am dismantling food industry in the United States. It's a much harder battle. Communism was easy.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, there's one more out here, and then again, anyone with questions, please chime in. This is so fascinating. But Madison says that her sister is 25 and she has rheumatoid arthritis. What changes can she make in her diet to help reduce the severity of her bad days?
Yeah. You know, if she can, have her see an integrative physician or myself, or if she lives somewhere in her area, because sometimes it's connected, like I said, to gut health. We cannot always kind of reverse the course of these diseases when they are already developed, unfortunately. But sometimes we can. I had a young woman at Canyon Ranch who turned out with her rheumatoid, she actually turned out to have something called small intestine bacterial overgrowth. Too many microbes in the wrong place of the intestines. And that can fuel inflammation. And so when we treated that, her rheumatoid completely kind of went silent. She didn't have, for 2 years, she haven't had any flares. And I don't know, and she was able to go off her medications too. So she stopped her medications, she changed her diet, was mostly high fiber, kind of plant-based diet, but she also required treatment of the small intestine overgrowth, with which we did, in her case, we chose different botanicals, herbs basically. And I eliminate gluten in anybody who has autoimmune disease. I often eliminate dairy as well. That's another common trigger. So I don't know if she's still, I'm not there anymore. I don't know if she's still without any flares, but for 2 years she was holding very well.
That's good. When do you do consulting online, or do people need to come see you?
You know, for first visit, I prefer to meet people in person if possible. Certainly with COVID, if somebody was afraid, we can do telemedicine. So I can see them on the screen, but I cannot examine them as well. So I prefer to do the first visit in person, and then for follow-ups, we can go online. We can do them by telemedicine.
All right, and here's another question. Sandra says, I shop at the local farmer's market on Saturdays. Is it okay to purchase lettuces or spinach that have the brown or black spots? And the food there is not so perfect as in the grocery stores. But would that be harmful for us?
I would ask the farmers if why the brown spots are on it. You know, maybe it's innocent. I would also ask them how they grow their food. Sometimes I actually like to shop in farmers market. I like to get to know the farmers, so I know how they produce, what kind of pesticides they're used, if any. But if you can get good organic produce in the supermarkets, that's fine too. So I would ask the farmer what the brown spots mean. I don't know.
Okay, so here's another one. Not sure if this is related, but my daughter is 9 and has eczema, we think, the last year, and has broke out all over her body. She's been prescribed multiple creams and has had a dermatologist, but has been told to change to non-scented shampoos and such. Could there be a food-related issue?
It could be. Yes, it could be. So eczema is kind of like the first step in what we call the atopic march. You know, eczema comes first, then you get runny nose, allergies, and then you may develop asthma. And some people don't progress through all the stages. They just stay with eczema, and sometimes it goes away as they kind of outgrow it sometimes, but it could be some kind of food sensitivity. So I would definitely look at that. I would look, you can do stool sample, look at her microbiome, how diverse it is. Does she have good diversity? You know, trust me, I have a 9-year-old. It's not easy to be kind of changing diet of children. So, you know, you want to know what you're doing, make kind of be sure that if you take some foods away that she really needs it. So I think the testing would be helpful in that case.
Thank you. And then the next question is, do you have any reference or guidelines on the pesticides to avoid? Obviously, many of them, but have you heard, you know, we've heard that organic may sometimes be used as a catch-all and is not very standardized.
Yeah, it's a very, very good question, you know, and is there any guide? You know, I actually haven't looked myself if ewg.org has that section, but if anybody would, they probably would. And ewg.org is Environmental Working Group, EWG, Environmental Working Group.org. It's a very good website. They are in existence for decades. They have a whole team of people doing research, which foods are the most contaminated with pesticides, which are not. So like you have the clean 15 and dirty dozen. Dirty dozens are the foods that you always should buy organic. Clean 15, you might get away even if they are not organic. So they may have information more about the pesticides, but you're right, the organic pesticides, what does it really mean? You know, the rotenone that causes Parkinson's disease is considered natural. But if it's used, it's not regulated. They could be dumping tons of these natural things on the produce, then maybe it's causing some diseases too. Best would be to not use any, you know. And there is a kind of agriculture that is really not using any pesticides. They are focusing more on having plenty of birds around their field, so the birds eat the insect. So they build bird feeders for the birds that they want to attract, and they grow certain flowers to attract the right type of insects that will protect from the bad insects. There's a whole kind of type of agriculture out there that is working on the premise of being really natural, no chemicals, not even the organic chemicals.
All right. Are there any other one last question out there? All right. Well, I know for me, this has been some powerful information, and thank you. So insightful. So, you know,
Thank you for having me.
Oh, yes. Thank you. You know, it's so beneficial. Maybe we can work on you coming back, because this topic, like you say, is too important for us to not keep understanding it, because there's too much need for us to counterbalance those trends you presented at the beginning. But thank you so much, and thank you AdventHealth for sponsoring this program today.